Okay, everyone wave in this direction. Make sure there's people. And yeah, just get up and yeah, got three adults and one child. So 3.5 people, I guess. But anyways. So imagine being penalized for 60, 70, even up to 80 years for something you did as a teenager, some dumb mistake you did. So today I'm going to be discussing the restoration of rights for convicted felons. Now, I know a lot of people say that, oh, you know, a convicted felon, they committed some big crime, they deserve to have everything taken from them, so on and so forth. And to an extent I agree, but that's what prison sentences and parole and probation are for. The biggest argument I have is, you know, if you serve your time and you pay your debt to society, then you should be able to get those back. Once your sentence is up and your rights should be restored after your parole, probation, prison sentence, and so on. The only exception I would have for this, particularly, are capital offenders, sexual offenders, and repeat offenders. So capital offenders, murderers, traitors, espionage, anything that you could justifiably get the death sentence for or the death penalty for, as well as obviously sexual offenders, which we don't need to go into, that's kind of self-explanatory, as well as repeat offenders. So even if you commit a non-violent felony and you were to get out and you were to have your rights restored, if you were to commit another crime and go back, then if you got released a second time, then you would not be able to get those rights restored. However, for felons that did not commit capital or sexual offenses and they're not repeat offenders, after their time is up, I believe they should be able to get those rights restored. Throughout this presentation, I'll cover various reasons as to why they should get their rights restored and why rehabilitated criminals should be treated like any other citizen. The first thing I'll go over is taxation and voting, as well as owning and use of a firearm for convicted felons, as well as the incentive of why we should allow them to do this. So the first thing I'll go over is taxation and voting, and my little representation here is a flag that our founding fathers came up with, because the whole reason this country exists is because of taxation without representation. Now, that's a larger scale than what we're talking about. However, once a convicted felon is released from prison, they're still expected to pay taxes on any income or anything else that they would have financial responsibility on, just like a law-abiding citizen with a clean record. So I believe that if you are going to be subject to taxes and also subject to political policy and law, regardless of your standing of being a criminal or a law-abiding citizen, you should be able to have a voice in that. The second point I'll bring up is owning a firearm. And one of the main reasons that I bring this up is, one, convicted felons can still go out and have families. And particularly with my interview with Kyle Kitchens, who was my pastor, he was one of those people that he got saved in prison. Well, he has a loving family, beautiful wife, 3 kids, all beautiful family, all good people, God-fearing people. However, he cannot own a firearm because he's a convicted felon. He got convicted on a drug crime back in the 90s. Well, if someone were to break into his house, there's no way for him to reasonably protect himself or his family, his wife or his 3 very young children, because he's a convicted felon. Even his wife cannot own a firearm, even though she has a clean record. They cannot keep a firearm in the same household. And so my last main point will be the incentive side. So incentive-wise, a lot of convicted felons, when they leave prison, a lot of them initially come from impoverished households anyway. But then those that don't come from impoverished households and don't come from poverty, it's very hard for them to get a job. So they end up slipping into a life of poverty. Well, if they're being held back because of their criminal past, even though their dues have been paid, essentially, their sentences and their probation and parole are up, what's their incentive to do better? Because if they can't get a job and they can't provide for themselves and they can't have any other benefits of a regular person, then a lot of them intentionally go commit crimes just to go back to prison, because there's a guarantee of getting 3 meals a day, a roof over their head, and having a bed to sleep in. So they'll go out and commit crimes and potentially hurt other people just so they can get that shelter and those basic human needs that we need to survive. However, that can be mitigated if we just allow them to truly reintegrate into society. So, in conclusion, I've gone over my 3 main points of why convicted felons should be allowed to vote, why they should own a firearm, and also the incentive for us letting them to do so. In conclusion, I hope I've provided a new perspective to anyone who maybe doesn't agree with me, and I hope I've been able to at least humanize those convicted felons who, though they made a mistake and they do deserve to pay for their crimes, once that has been paid, they should be allowed to re-enter our society to truly be free people and free of that